Hi folks, I moved my backdrop a little so it's a little bit wonky, but we're going to leave that alone as it is. I was looking at what is going on astrologically and what I feel like I have to say next, and clearly we're working our way up to the new moon solar eclipse in Libra video that needs to be done. There's actually, sort of on a blow-by-blow basis, a few different things that I feel like I want to cover, and it might be that today, tomorrow, day after, for the next 3 or 4 days, I end up doing daily videos to cover everything that needs to be covered. And that's fine. I like to do videos. I like to leave a day or a day or two between videos just so the last one gets digested. Today, I want to talk about two things. One that looks ahead to the Mars retrograde that's coming up, and one that actually looks to the new moon solar eclipse that we have on October the 2nd. Because as you know, when I look at a lunation, a new moon or a full moon, I not only look at the aspects made by the new moon or the full moon, I also look at other aspects that are going on that are being made by transiting planets close to the date of the new moon and the full moon, and I refer to how that energy is encoded into particularly a new moon, because the new moon is the start of a month. And you've heard me say this tons of times before, the word month is derived from the word moon. So the month of Libra starts on October the 2nd, all the way to November the 1st, November the 2nd, when we have the new moon in Scorpio. And whatever the key aspects are that are approaching that may not have anything to do with the new moon in and of itself, aspects made by other transiting planets, I feel like that energy is encoded into the new moon and into the potential of the month that unfolds after the new moon occurs. And what is really occurring, essentially, is a grand trine is building. Yay, we love grand trines. Grand trine is basically a triangle being made by 3 planets, in this case Venus in Scorpio, Saturn in Pisces, and Mars in Cancer. It's in the water signs. And it unfolds. In other words, Mars trining Saturn occurs tomorrow on the 29th of September. Venus trining Saturn occurs on October the 4th, and then on October the 8th, like, what's left? Venus trines Mars. Hello. So let's do this again. Tomorrow, Mars trines Saturn, Mars in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces. On the 4th of October, 2 days after the solar eclipse, Venus trines Saturn, Venus in Scorpio, Saturn in Pisces. And on the 8th of October, Venus in Scorpio trines Mars in Cancer. The two aspects that are encoded into the new moon solar eclipse in Aries are Venus trining Saturn and Venus trining Mars. The Mars trine Saturn will be completed by the time we get to the new moon solar eclipse. But the Mars trine Saturn is one of the aspects that occurs 3 times between tomorrow and April the 4th, because Mars is going to go retrograde on December the 4th. So Mars will trine Saturn on September 29th to 30th, depending on where you are, February 9th, give or take a day, April 4th, give or take a day. Mars will also trine Neptune 3 times, and square Chiron 3 times, and oppose Pluto 3 times, and trine the North Node 3 times. I've already done a Mars retrograde direct video. It's a lovely, glorious change supporting Mars retrograde. And not all Mars retrogrades are glorious, and I expect that we're all going to be appropriately uncomfortable when the retrograde happens, because we lose our sense of energy and vitality and have to go back to the drawing board and do all sorts of things. Fine, but that's for another topic, that's for another video. Already this week, if you're like, Abhi, where is this video coming from and why are we doing this video? Partly, we're doing this video to prepare for the Aries new moon eclipse video, because this content is relevant to at least the Grand Trine is relevant to, or two parts of the trine are relevant to that new moon solar eclipse. And this gives you the heads up that those trines are occurring on October the 4th and 8th that involve Venus trining Saturn and Venus trining Mars. But I've also done a weekly overview this week. And I've also done a compass video 2 days ago that I actually really, this sounds like a weird thing for me to say. There's important content in that compass video if you haven't seen it. And what I have to say now or today builds on both those videos. But especially it builds on both those videos. Why? Because when we did the weekly overview, I talked about the Mars trining Saturn, because when we do the weekly overviews, we look at the aspects that are occurring between the transiting planets and the week as it unfolds. And so I said on Sunday, Mars will trine Saturn. And I talked a little bit about what that means, but I'm going to talk more about that now. And the two things that I brought up in the sort of compass video that I did 2 days ago, the video that I did a couple of days ago, one, of course, was the fact that between today and tomorrow, the Sun and Mercury will conjunct the South Node, again, prepping us up for the eclipse. It's a South Node eclipse. But I also talked a little bit about Mercury opposing Neptune. And the fact that over the past couple of weeks, even if we go back to the lunar eclipse in Pisces conjuncting Neptune on September the 17th, which is a little over a week ago at this point, 10 days ago, it's the 28th today. Not only was that eclipse conjunct Neptune, but also encoded into that eclipse was Mercury opposing Saturn. And I talked about the fact that with the Sun having opposed Neptune a few days after that eclipse, and Mercury coming into place and opposing Neptune 3 days ago on the 25th, which is why I did that video, we are in a place where we may feel like we uncomfortably got to a place or got to a position where either the week before or after July the 17th, 2 months before the lunar eclipse on September 17th, or the week before and after September the 17th, we may have felt like we were exposed or given greater visibility or given greater clarity. When I did the eclipse video, I titled it A Light on Toxicity and or Vagueness. And in the video I did 2 or 3 days ago, I talked about the fact that Mercury opposing Neptune might mean that we feel like we have the urge to, because the same kind of feeling and energy of vagueness in the Pisces part of our chart is triggered. It's so funny. I just did a reading earlier today, and I'm connecting the dots on that reading. And for this person, if you're watching this, I'm doing this on the 28th, and we talked earlier, Pisces is in your 4th house of home, land, real estate, mother. I'm not going to get more personal than that. And it's the timing of, particularly of whatever it is that happened a couple of days, or the past couple of days, with that Mercury, it's just like, can't make this up, with Mercury opposing Neptune. I'm thinking of another instance where this applies as well. Now, as you know, when I do these kinds of videos, they're not based on fantasy, they're based on my own interpreting the charts, and I use actively the readings that I'm doing as Data, not data as in everyone that I'm talking to is some sort of impartial psychological case that I'm sort of forensically examining, but continuing sort of irrefutable proof that what I am interpreting actually I've mentioned this before. I'm a skeptical astrologer. I want to, I really, I want to, I don't make conclusions based on just conjecture. And when I predict or do a reading, whether I do a reading generally like I do on these videos or when I read a chart, it's based on what I feel like I see consistently when certain transits occur. And that's why when I do readings, for the first X number of minutes of it, I don't really want to know anything about what's going on. So I can just kind of interpret what I'm seeing. Whether it's the week before and after July the 17th, 2 months before lunar eclipse, whether it's the week before and after September 17th, the Sun opposing Neptune, the full moon lunar eclipse being conjunct Neptune, and Mercury opposing Neptune earlier this week, may have prompted us to get clarity. It may have taken something that was solar, that had a sense of awareness, and push it to a more mercurial place, as I said in the last video I did. Either we decide to communicate about it, or a communication occurs that makes those crisis in Pisces alarm bells ring off again. And so it may be that we receive some sort of communication and we go, here is, and the crisis in Pisces, for those of you who have been following, I've been saying since 2012 with Neptune going over Pisces, but particularly 2014, 15, 16, 17, the Pisces part of your chart, the house occupied by Pisces in your chart, some sort of lingering, ongoing energy leak crisis, either because creative or spiritual pursuits in that part of the chart have not been structured and have not found some sort of structured outlet. So a happy outcome of Saturn being in Pisces since March 2023 through Jan-Feb 2026 might be to structure and concretize how we're going to move in a more spiritual, creative direction in the Pisces part of the chart in the house occupied by Pisces. Or in certain cases, there's this idea of dealing with foggy, creating lost, deceptive, gaslighty behavior that may not be consistent all the time, but if it happens once or twice, then it colors everything that we are seeing and dealing with related to that part of the chart. And in the dates that I just mentioned, week before after July 17th, September 17th, Sun opposing Neptune, Mercury opposing Neptune, something that was re-triggered may have this past week, this is why I go back to the weekly overview, but the weekly overview is more important because I still feel strongly that it's time for all of us to, those of us who are now, this is the thing that, you know, this is why I'm saying that this video builds on the weekly overview on the video I did 2-3 days ago. And let me explain. There's an aspect of us being done with the status quo and creating and getting ready for change in our lives. That this grand trine, that all grand trines in a certain sense create a flow and a harmony around. But then there's also added to that, and this has been sort of a thematic consistency that we've been dealing with for some time now. There's the idea of stabilizing or structuring whatever's going on in the Pisces part of the chart so that it doesn't sabotage or spill over or continue to be an energy leak. And some of this can be, it can take all sorts of forms. It can take the form of setting boundaries. It can take the form of cutting losses. It can take the form of fighting for something you believe in, depending on the situation. Now, those are all three different outcomes of scenarios. But they're all Saturnian, if your intention is right and You're trying to build a strong foundation that's going to allow you to move forward towards your highest potential. And if you're acting responsibly and thoughtfully and strategically. In the light of being triggered again in the Pisces part of our chart, either week before after July 17th or September 17th, and with the sun opposing, we're basically at this point in time, some of us are actually actively, one half of it with Mercury, as I said, is actually dealing with the communication angle of things. Someone communicated something, it's triggered something in you, you might communicate back, you might try and reach some clarity or not, or at least feel like in the absence of clarity, I need to do something in order to at least feel like I am speaking, I am documenting, I'm representing my truth. And the other half of it is that if it's not quite in the realm of communication, the other part of mercurial activity is planning, organizing. I have no idea what that, I've never heard that kind of noise before. I don't know where that noise is coming from for those of you hearing it. Sorry. And by the way, in my last video, I sort of made this joke about kids, and I hope I was kidding. And even this kind of annoyance is more present just by virtue of when I'm doing my regular work, it doesn't bother me, and when I'm putzing around that, it's just when I'm, as you know, when I'm doing these videos, I'm just in a specific space, and any noise, it just feels like it's 10 times louder than it actually is. That's all. But no, I have nothing against children. So whatever I said in that last video, please know that it was a joke. All of this is to say, the other half of the mercurial activity, of course, is in taking things to a place of planning and strategizing. How am I going to deal with this? What's the best way to organize this? What's the best way to get data? What do I do next? How do I go about it? Something goes from a solar or a lunar awareness or a set of activities that occurred in the middle of July to the end of July or last couple of weeks. And we are in communicating, thinking, planning mode. And it could involve this crisis in Pisces that has been occurring. We're either structuring something or moving towards structuring something artistic or spiritual, or we are trying to get some definition and stability around something that is murky. And then here comes Mars trining Saturn tomorrow. And this is a very puzzling aspect. I don't know if you remember what June and July felt like, but in June, a lot of the personal planets the personal planets, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, the lunations, as they went through the sign of Gemini, they squared Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. And that felt very awkward. And then in July, as those planets moved into the sign of Cancer and they trined Mars and Neptune, all of a sudden a certain flow and a certain peace occurred. Now, what's interesting is that we've just come through a lunar eclipse in Pisces that was conjunct Neptune, with Mercury opposing Saturn. And we've just come through Mercury opposing Neptune. So we're likely to be feeling edgy about matters related to the sign of Pisces. An urgency to be in communication, dealing with certain communication, or an urgency to be planning and strategizing about stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart. And then from the Cancer part of the chart, here's Mars that goes flow and harmony with Saturn. Now, we know, those of you who've been listening to my videos know that there's an arc related to the solar eclipse in Aries, or the Aries part of the chart, where we're trying to move to something related to the Aries part of the chart that we've been trying to move towards since April of 2023, and we are in a place where we're trying to move towards it by the end of June of 2024, based on what we know now. What we know now is that much more informed that we can actually move towards it. And two parts of the chart that need endings and new beginnings and need resolutions, and they're not going to be immediate, are between the Cancer and the Leo parts of the chart and the Pisces and the Aries part of the chart. Why? Because Mars, currently in Cancer, will go into Leo, go retrograde, come back into Cancer, tie certain things up, and then go direct again, and come back into Leo in April of next year. And that indicates a certain amount of back and forth or closure that is needed on certain things. So this Mars trine Saturn, or whatever is trying to be stabilized in the Pisces part of the chart, this Mars trine Saturn and whatever is trying to be stabilized in the Pisces, it's not an overnight thing. It's not that it happens, it's like it needs to happen 3 times. Mars needs to trine Saturn, square Chiron, trine Neptune, trine the North Node, retrograde, trine the North Node, trine Neptune, trine square Chiron, trine Saturn, go direct, and then finally go through that entire sequence again between now and April. And something needs to be tied up that can't be tied up that easily. And one of the areas of our chart where, in order for us to get from A to Z between now and the end of the first week of June, one of the parts of the chart that we have to understand that's going to need a certain amount of closure, and it's not going to happen right away. And in fact, it is in our best interests that it doesn't quite happen quickly or rapidly, that we follow the timing outlined by the planets, is this thing about something needing to be closed or resolved in the Cancer part of the chart so that we can fully embody or act on or act in the Leo part of the chart. Added to this, on the 30th, on Monday, we have the Sun conjuncting Mercury, and that conjunction is related to the Leo communication cycle we're in. I'm going to develop that in one of these videos every day that I'm planning on doing over the next 2 or 3 days. The other part of the chart where something needs to be closed up, wrapped up in the Pisces part of the chart so that we can fully embody and lean into the Aries part of the chart is indicated by the fact that Mercury and Venus go retrograde between Pisces and Aries in March and April of next year. This is why I say there's a concept, there's an idea sometimes when we are trying to move from one place to the other, or one state to the other, or we're trying to be done with a status quo, there can be an urgency to do it quickly. And there's something to this time frame between now and at least the middle to the end of April, if not the end of the first week of June, that really suggests that in order for us to make this change effectively and in a way that is in our best interests and maximizes our potential, that we do it slowly. We do it methodically. We respect the repeating trines between Mars and Saturn and Mars and Neptune and Mars and the North Node. We respect that while Saturn, we just had a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, and that eclipse was triggered in the middle of July, and we've just had these oppositions to Saturn and Neptune. And in the middle of July, we're going to be 2 months before, I think it's the March 13th, full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, which was on the Pisces Virgo axis again. And by the time we get to March, Venus and Mercury, Aries to Pisces, retrograde, all of that's going to be, and we respect that whatever we're trying to do is not an overnight process. There's a step by step by step by step process. And those of us who've actually felt like there's something we're trying to pursue or move towards, or something expansive that we're trying to do, as I said, don't get so attached to the outcome or think that you know what the outcome is going to be, to limit what it is that the North Node and Aries eclipses are trying to lead you towards, and what it is that the Libra South Node eclipses, the last of which we have on October the 2nd, coming up next week, are trying to get you to release. Just stay aligned with whatever it is that feels expansive and feels like it's an area you want to go in towards and that you have not been able to successfully go towards since April of last year. You may have tried to move forward April, May, June, July, August, been pulled back to become aware of what needs to be released between October and March. Some sort of forward movement again, April, May, June, July. Pause, reconsider timelines, reconsider everything in August, and now it's forward movement again. But this time the forward movement and this timeline, this idea of going slow all the way to the end of the first week of June next year, the idea of going slow builds on and respects what we know now that we did not know and understand between April and August of last year. Now we know what it's going to take. And now we know, well, we may not know, but we know enough to consider this idea of why it is that it is important to take things gradually. And remember, we're doing that so that we don't hasten change frantically without a strong enough foundation, because that can lead to chaos. Things will likely eventually stabilize, but if you're trying to get from A to Z and you're trying to maximize what is available to you, and you're trying to do it in a steady and rooted a manner so that by the time you get to Z, you really feel like there's a strong foundation there. You don't want to just start uprooting, do it in a kind of a chaotic way, because there are things that need to be dealt with where you are, there are things that need to be dealt with where it is that you're headed to. And there's an outcome that needs to be designed in a way that really benefits you. It may not be as binary as discard A, move to Z. It might be a kind of an A and Z thing for some people. There's a process here. What is interesting to me about this Mars trining Saturn, Mars in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces, is the suggestion that some sort of action being taken in the Cancer part of the chart. And only you, those of you who know, Mars acting, if Cancer is in your 12th house, that's a very different type of action than Cancer being in your first house, or Cancer being in your 10th house, or Cancer being in your 8th house, or Cancer being in your 4th house. The action and the nature and the quality of the action that is taken when Mars is transiting the 12th house and the first house are different. And you'll know this instinctively once you have a sense of where does the sign of Cancer sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? What action related to that particular house in terms of quality and the nature of the action that is taken can help stabilize, help Saturn stabilize the Pisces? And it's coming on the heels of the eclipse. It's coming on the heels of week before and after July 17th. It's coming on the heels of week before and after September 17th. It's coming on the heels of Mercury opposing Neptune on September 25th. We have Mars going into place going, oh, Saturn, we got each other. The two malefics, so to speak. But Mars, the action-oriented planet, demanding or asking for action to be taken in such a way that is actually, that has a flow, that has a support to helping Saturn stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. Now, for those people who feel like they have been triggered by something or something has happened, it has raised alarm bells for whatever it is that has been draining them in the Pisces part of the chart, there may have been some sort of action taken over the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, or there's thought towards it and planning towards it, because Mars, again, is associated with a certain quality of strategy. It's not just mental strategy. With Mars, it's planning on execution. It's a different quality. Mars, it's like a general getting all the pieces, everyone in the right place. It's like a leader of a corporation who knows who's trying to organize this massive project and is getting different departments into place in order to execute something. So action is being taken. And somewhere, it's interesting. On the one hand, I want to interpret Mars trining Saturn as flow and peace and harmony because it's a trine. And that is how we experienced the Sun and Mercury in July when they trined Saturn and Neptune. It was like a letting off of pressure. This time around, with Mars in the picture with Saturn, I feel like there is a dynamic towards taking action to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. And if part of that action, because Mars is involved, is setting boundaries on the heels of the eclipse and on the heels of Mercury opposing Saturn around the time of the eclipse and Mercury opposing Neptune a few days ago, and this kind of triggering feeling being back again, probably through some form of communication, then Mars trining Saturn is like this leadership, military general, CEO of a corporate, being the CEO of our lives and lining things up to support Saturn to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. With Mars, sometimes some aspect of war or conflict or boundary setting is present. But it's also present because in Mars' case, we are taking action towards our goals. And so that necessitates sometimes that boundaries are set around those who either deliberately, but more often than not, inadvertently, are getting in the way of those boundaries. Now I want to say about dogs what I said about children, but we will let that go. From what I've seen in readings, it's interesting. The eclipse, the week before and after July the 17th, the eclipse, Mercury opposing Neptune, they brought up this kind of crisis in Pisces feeling again. But I've also seen a resolve to take action on the heels of it, and with Mars trining Saturn, that is making me think that we actually have a power and an ability to take action now. See, I think the last time Mars trined Saturn, what is it? It's 24. Yeah. The last time Mars has not trined Saturn while Saturn has been in Pisces. It may have when it was in Scorpio, if Saturn had entered Pisces by that time. But the eclipses were not there at that time. There's something about, if you are in a space where you feel like you need to take certain actions to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, the energy leak, the gaslighting, or put some structure around spiritual and artistic goals related to the Pisces part of the chart, I think it's my way of saying that I'm seeing that energy present in both interpretively and in the readings that I'm doing. And the fact that this energy is present with the first Mars-Saturn trine makes me wonder whether some part of moving from where we are to where we need to get to by the end of the first week of June involves this activity in a kind of slightly protracted manner. We do it now, then it happens when Mars is retrograde, and then we do it again. And of course, the fact that it's happening between Cancer and Pisces talks to the fact that Mars is retrograde between Cancer and Pisces, and Venus and Mercury is retrograde in March, April between Cancer and Pisces. And Saturn and Neptune's presence in Pisces and Mars trine, there's this idea that part of the reason why we want to take it slow and steady to get from point A to point B, and it's not just going to happen in a matter of weeks or a couple of months, but it will take kind of 9 or 10 months, is the idea that something needs to be wrapped up in the Cancer and the Pisces part of the chart to allow us to, in a grounded manner, set foot on to the Leo and the Aries part of our charts. The opportunity is still indicated by the Aries, Taurus, and Gemini part of the chart, especially the Aries and Taurus part of our chart. Why? Because the North Node eclipses are still relevant in Aries and still exercising that power all the way till the end of the first week of June of next year. And Uranus is in Taurus, and Jupiter and Uranus conjuncted on April the 20th. And about 13 months after that, changes, endings, making room for new beginnings to move in a direction that is right for you in the Taurus part of the chart, continue to unfold till about, you guessed it, June of next year. And June the 8th, Jupiter leaves Gemini to go into Cancer. Whatever ending and new beginning Jupiter is making in Gemini, unless Gemini is in your 9th house where Jupiter's transit there is inaugurating a whole new start. This is a general reading, so take it with a grain of salt. It's not particular. I'm trying to cover all sorts of nuances here. But for most of us, Jupiter's transit through the Gemini part of the chart is going to be connected to the direction we're trying to move to in the Aries part of the chart, in the right direction, and the changes that are occurring in the Taurus part of the chart. If you're Libra rising and you have Gemini going over and you have Jupiter going over your 9th house, that is a different thing altogether. That is Jupiter coming in and trying to get you to etch a sketch and put you in touch with and get you into alignment from an overall life perspective. I talked about Mars trining Saturn in the weekly overview because it was something that was happening at the end of this week. I talked about Mercury opposing Neptune in the last video I did. And between the last video and the weekly overview, I covered the primary themes. In the weekly overview, I think, is when I said turn the key and bring out your planner. If nothing, no opportunity has shown up to prompt moving from the status quo to the desired direction, especially symbolized by the Aries part of the chart, you might be at a point where you're just done and you know that there's no choice but to start to take action, and the pieces will come together. And we're still, till October the 9th, we're still in eclipse territory. We're still in eclipse territory. And then with the last video I did, where I focused on the Sun and Mercury conjuncting the South Node today and tomorrow, and Mercury opposing Neptune on the 25th, there was more of a focus on sort of the crisis in Pisces and managing that and understanding what it is that needs to be released. In the last video I did, part of the reason why I liked it is because I really liked, I know when I'm being more articulate about certain things and about the South Node and what I say, I think that's useful content. I'm not just saying that. So we've got Mars trining Saturn, doing it 3 times between now and April the 4th, coming on the heels. So I wanted to punctuate, re-emphasize, because sometimes the biggest advantage I think that astrology gives us is the ability to say, I'm feeling like doing this. Is this right? Should I? Shouldn't I? Now, I can't tell anybody what they should or should not do. That's not just a disclaimer, although there is that aspect. But I don't know what the individual, nobody else knows the individual name, but enough is coming up interpretively and enough is coming up in my readings that made me think, yeah, that eclipse conjunct Neptune. Mars trining Saturn is a very constructive aspect to build a strong foundation and get things done. If you're not dealing with anything that is very gaslighty but you're trying to do something from the Cancer part of your chart to the Pisces part of your chart that is structuring things in a spiritual or a creative direction, I mean, go for it. Neptune, arts, music, healing of a certain kind. But for those who are feeling like in the Pisces part of the chart there's an energy leak and boundaries need to be set, this Mars trine Saturn is just added. It's like I'm thinking of those kinds of, when people work out, they consume like protein powders or energy. It's like added fuel. but not fuel to the fire, because that's not the energy when Mars trines Saturn. Mars has fiery energy, no question. But when Mars is trining Saturn, it's really about what are we building and how can we build this effectively and strategically. How do we win this? Something has shown up that has expressed a need since July the 10th of either needing structure and responsible work and building a strong foundation creatively or spiritually in the Pisces part of the chart, or dealing with and tackling an energy leak or loss or gaslighting behavior or lack of clarity, or maybe even just flat out untruths, or how something is impacting us negatively. And on the heels of all of this Mars trine Saturn, and I think what I'm noticing is a lot of people saying, I am starting to take action around this. This has come up before. I have not known how to deal with this. Now, partly because the idea of moving towards the direction we want to has to do with moving towards the Aries part of our chart, cooperating with and leading into the changes related to moving in the right direction, the Taurus part of the chart, and stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart. And because all of that goes together, there's the ability, based on the quality of the action related to the house in which Cancer sits in your chart, to act in such a way. And Mars is trining Saturn right now, but Mars is going to trine Neptune. Mars trines Saturn on September 30th. Mars squares Chiron on October the 13th. Chiron is in Aries. Mars trines Neptune on October the 28th. So between now and October the 28th, and especially heading to October 28th, you might take some sort of action to phase 1 of 3, because these are going to be aspects made 3 times, to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart from the Cancer part of the chart. This is a bigger deal than it might seem. It's what we've been waiting for. Remember that by the time we get to July, Saturn will have met up with Neptune. And Saturn does this interesting thing between, I keep talking about the end of the first week of June, and right after that, Saturn and Neptune meet up in Pisces, and Saturn escorts Neptune out into Aries. They both come back into Pisces, and by January, February 26th, they're out. It's almost like whatever it is that we're doing between now and the end of the first week of June, or in the case of the actions being taken from the Cancer, Mars in Cancer, the last of the trines is going to be on April the 19th when Mars trines Neptune, when he is direct from Cancer. So let's just say between now and the middle of April, we have a chance to actually be able to, there's harmony, there's flow, and there could even be the potential for cooperation. There could even be the potential for a handshake. There could be the potential for the first half of a kind of resolution, the second half of which has to do with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, walking in together into Aries and back into Pisces and later, And stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, given the fact that there's been a crisis there since 2012 and peaked, and this is what we've been waiting for and waiting to do. And the fact that something has come up that has made you go, on a constructive side, I really got to get off my butt and start to take care of this creative project or this spiritual project or this kind of stabilize and structure my goals in the Pisces part of the chart. Wonderful. What action can be taken from the Cancer part of the chart to support that between now and April the 19th. And it's a process. To get from where we want to where we want to go, sometimes it's important to rip off the Band-Aid and just do it. In this case, you're doing it, but it will work to your advantage to honor the timing of these repeated transits. Now, I'm not saying that, for example, if moving from A to Z involves moving cities or towns or homes, if something comes up and you find your ideal situation and you have to be there in December, I'm not saying prolong it till the end of the first week of June just because this astrologer on YouTube said so. But what I am saying is that there's something about, let's say you move to where it is that you want to move to in December. There's something I am telling you that is not done. You might move, but the act of what you need to do back where you are to actually finishing up the move at least takes you to the middle to the end of April, if not to the end of the first week of June. So that's my way of saying you don't have to stop progress, but embrace a responsible, structured, appropriately methodical way of doing it. I'm not saying prolong it unnecessarily and go into overthinking mode or procrastinate or wait for the timing to. I'm just saying take action, but there's a reason. It's not as simple as I can just pack my suitcases and I can just get on. It's not that. There's something about this that has this kind of, we'll get there. And even if you physically get somewhere well before April of next year to end of first week of June of next year, there's still a process of closure. Things need to be closed out between Cancer and Pisces so that you can fully step stably into Leo and Aries by the middle to the end of April, and it becomes more stabilized and finalized by the end of the first week of June. And this Mars-Saturn trine, I think part of the reason why I decided to do this video is because the Mars-Saturn trine, Mars-Saturn trine did not get a lot of attention in the last two videos. In the last video, it was the conjunctions to the South Node that got the attention, understandably, and a discussion about the South Node. And Mercury opposing Neptune, which is related to what we're talking about. And then the weekly overview focused a lot on the grand trine of opportunity between the Sun and Mercury trining Pluto and Capricorn and Uranus and Taurus. And based on everything that I'm seeing, and as I was like, no, I need to talk about Mars trine Saturn. I need to give you, if you're feeling like I need to take action to structure my artistic and creative goals now, or I need to, it's the final push, I can't back down, and I really need to do something to manage, stabilize, in certain cases, set boundaries around Mercury behavior that has been going on, that needs to be done. I need to stand up for myself in these ways, or I need to get clarity in these ways. Then I need to stop the energy leak in these ways. I need to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart so it doesn't sabotage where I'm trying to go. Then the impulse may be right. I can't confirm that individually without knowing what is going on for each person, but the impulse may be right. And it may have, if the intention is clean and clear and balanced and responsible. This could be the energy we need to actually stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. Phase 1 takes us to the end of the first week of June. Phase 2 takes us from June to February of 2026. When Saturn really takes over. The other part of this that is occurring that creates a curious opportunity is what blessings Now, this is really more encoded into part of the reason why these 3 videos that I'm doing this week, this one, the one I did before, and the weekly overview go together, is because, as I mentioned to you, aspects don't happen in isolation. It's a stew. It's what's in the cauldron at any given time. And we have a South Node new moon solar eclipse in Aries. Excuse me, in Libra. If I've been saying Aries, forgive me. God, this Mercury Sun conjunction, you know, when it does these kinds of minor Mercury retrograde things. This new moon solar eclipse in Libra, South Node on October the 2nd. With these South Node conjunctions right now. The oppositions to Neptune, the trine between Mars and Saturn. And as far as the new moon solar eclipse is concerned, the encoding of Venus in Scorpio, creating some sort of opportunity, potential for harmony, some sort of blessing that supports Saturn in Pisces and Mars in Cancer. Wherever Venus goes, she creates opportunity, she brings blessings, she brings harmony, relationship potential, financial potential, the potential for a handshake. I would have loved it if the trine, all of the trine was happening after the new moon solar eclipse in Libra, because the entire thing would be encoded. So whatever it is that you were releasing, that, you know, October 2nd, December 2nd, I'm going to talk more about that when I do the eclipse video, because if I start talking about whatever we're releasing, we'll be here for 2 hours. Because whatever you were releasing could somehow be linked and connected to this other trine between Venus and Saturn and Mars. But the Mars trine Saturn occurs tomorrow. And the Mars trine Saturn occurs on the heels of a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 17th, with the week before and after July the 17th being relevant, and the Sun opposing Neptune and Mercury opposing Neptune as recently as the 25th of September. And Mars is trining Saturn around that time. The energy to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, whether you are strategizing about it, planning about it, in communication about it, dealing with communication, feel like you want to make some plans around structuring and achieving and acting on and building and manifesting and creating creative or spiritual outcomes in the Pisces part of the chart, or something came up over the past 2-3 weeks, something came up week before and after July 7th that needs your attention, that needs communication. And it may have been through communication, it needs communication, but it also needs action with Mars trining Saturn. That energy, the energy of execution or fighting back and setting boundaries, very present. And remember, it's never on the day, from my perspective, it's rarely on the day that an aspect is exact. It's as we approach the aspect. And the Mars trine Saturn is happening tomorrow. But with Mars, you know, with the Sun, I give it about 5 degrees. And that's about 5 days. With Mars, 5 degrees can be about 7-8 days. So it could be that over the past week, as Mercury got in line to oppose Neptune, the Mars-Saturn transit was already kind of there to help us deal with whatever it is that came up that made us feel like, I need to set these boundaries. And some people may already be in action around that. And some people, as I said, may be in strategizing mode around what to do. But it's not a slant, it develops through April. And it develops in such a way that Mars, as I said, trines Saturn, squares Neptune, so there's some action that needs to be taken, maybe related to what's going on, but because thematically, when we're dealing with energetically, moving towards the direction we want to move towards and healing something that has separated us from ourselves, Chiron, moving in the direction we want to and stabilizing on the part of the chart, ultimately it may come from the same energetic space to achieve both those outcomes. And Mars's transit feeds both the energies of stabilizing and the energies of supporting through action the direction we want to go in, because Mars squares Chiron and then trines the North Node. And two of those trines are when Mars is in Leo and the North Node is in Aries. The last of those trines, by the last of those trines, Mars is going to be in Cancer and the North Node is going to be in Pisces. So this is part of this journey of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Take it slow. You probably instinctively can tell that part of the reason why moving towards a certain desired direction did not work last year and so far this year is because you may have been contemplating scenarios that would not have achieved the transformation from the status quo in an elegant or organized manner. And now you can, and now you understand it, and now you know there's a process. And now you know you don't need to stop the new, but you have an instinctive awareness that to actually stabilize the new, to be done with the status quo, will take a certain amount of time. And that process stands now. I stand by whatever that video was where I said, bring out the planner, turn the key, get moving towards where you want to go, because we are done with the status quo. But I also stand by what I said in the last video with regard to what we need to do to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, because they go hand in hand. Moving towards the Aries, Taurus part of our chart, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart. And for some people, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart is actually achieving and creating something spiritual or creative. It's not just dealing with deception and loss and gaslightiness and lying. Whether we are creating that gaslightiness or whether we're on the receiving end of it. Or some of it is also just clearing our own mental fog, because we have, since 2012, and particularly 2014, 15, 16, 17, become so Neptunian, so foggy, so unclear about what is going on in the Pisces part of the chart that we have lost the ability so far to really be able to tell what exactly is going on. Because there's some truth to the fogginess, but everything isn't foggy. There's some truth to what was shady, but everything isn't necessarily shady. And that distinction is important so that you can deal with things as you need to. Added to this, and we'll talk about this more because this is going to come up in the weekly overview that we do for next week. This is going to come up in the new moon solar eclipse and Libra video that I'm going to do. We have Venus in Scorpio moving into place to provide some healing energy, some creative energy, relationship opportunities, financial opportunities, what you value, clarity on values, clarity on what you value somehow that contributes to stabilizing things with the Pisces in the Pisces part of the chart and supporting Mars in the actions that he's taking to with the Saturn trine. 59 minutes into this video, and everything I've said, if you were to say, Abhi, summarize it in one line. If you are feeling the urge, particularly as this week has gone on, to one half of the urge is to go ahead and be done with the status quo and move in the right direction, get organized and start to change some of your routine, change whatever it is that you need to change on your end to become more effective at moving in the direction that you want. I think that's the right impulse. The other right impulse that is very strong is to once and for all get into the fray and sort out, either start the process of building something really concrete. With Saturn, it's often career-oriented. creative or spiritual related to the Pisces part of your chart and start to meet those goals and move towards those goals. It's the first of a number of eclipses that takes us to February of 2027. It's a new set of energy. But for those of us who've been dealing with foggier energies, and some people may be dealing with some combination of both, those of us who've been dealing with foggier energies, it's time to get in the fray and not only turn the key to move in the direction that we want, the Aries Taurus part of the chart, but really with these planetary placements. And remember, with that October 2nd eclipse, it's the week before and after October 2nd and the week before and after December 2nd too. Because, and this is data that I see, for whatever reason, 2 months after a solar eclipse, eclipsy things show up. What needs to be released? I'm starting to go into solar eclipse in Libra territory, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave that for one of the next videos. I'm still running my $50 30-minute eclipse special. So if you would like to know about how the eclipses are impacting you, the Pisces Virgo axis, the Aries Libra axis, your birth chart, offering a 30-minute reading for $50, you can. And also the single topic 30-minute reading is also available. It's priced differently, but so is the regular 60 to 75-minute reading. So if you want information on any of those, whether it's the eclipse special for $50, whether it is the other two options, just email me in the email address in the description box below and I can let you know details. I have any requests for readings, please know that I have responded to all of them. So if you feel you haven't received a response from me, check your spam or your junk mail folder. This is for readings. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, if you find the content helpful, and hover over the bell icon next to the subscribe button, click the wiggly bell on top, and you'll be notified when I do new videos. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. Comment, like on the videos if you feel so inclined. It gives it greater circulation on YouTube. And yeah, those of you who haven't checked out the last one, especially, whether you get to the weekly over, because I know there's only so much time we all have, and I would more strongly advocate that we be in action towards where we want to go and set the boundaries that we do than we spend all our time on YouTube watching videos. There, I said it. But there's some stuff, especially in the second half of the last video, where I start talking about the South Node, that I think that content for people who are interested might be interesting and relevant. All right, folks, onward. And appreciate that sometimes when we're trying to move away from the status quo and move to a desired direction, appreciate that it's not as simple as just a departure. It's a much bigger change. It's a much bigger change. And so, I don't know why I'm sort of reminded of this kind of the slow food movement, It'll be healthier and stabler to tackle what you need to tackle where you're at, symbolized by the Cancer and the Pisces part of the chart, so that you can get to the Leo and the Aries part of the chart in a much more stable and grounded manner. If you do it prematurely, things will still stabilize, but it may lead to a certain amount of chaos that can be stressful, and other things will need your priority. Stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart will need your priority. And this Venus going through Scorpio, getting ready to contribute to this trine next week. This week, Mercury opposing Neptune. Mars, yes, trining Saturn, giving us the spine to move towards our goals, or to say enough is enough. I need some clarity. We need to start to clean this up. But then next week, Venus in Scorpio going, let me help out. How? In what way? More to come. All right, thanks.